Welcome to the Inner Huddle, the podcast for parents and coaches to help children fulfill their potential both on and off the pitch.
Welcome along to the Inner Huddle Series 2, Episode 2. I'm Pez, and as always, I am joined in the studio with my right-hand man, Geoff. How are you doing, Geoff?
Yeah, good, thanks, Pez.
Excellent. And this episode is brought to you by Dimensions Carpentry and Construction, a friendly family-run business for turnkey refurb projects. Got any projects coming up, Geoff?
I don't, Pez, no.
You're the man who's been doing the garden for about 3 years, so perhaps it's time to call in some professionals. Any carpentry?
That's my old man's work. Well, it was before he retired, so...
You're going to get him out of retirement.
No chance.
If not, we could get Dimensions Carpentry and Construction on the case. Cool. Right. So as always, hopefully everyone's familiar with the way the show goes, but we have got 10 questions in front of us sent in by parents and coaches, mainly locally, but some from further afield and across the world, because we do have, believe it or not, Geoff, quite a far-reaching audience.
Series 2, Episode 2. Who'd have thought we'd be lasting that long, Pez?
I know, unbelievable. Well, we did have a long break. And we should say that this is our second attempt at Episode 2. We got about halfway through and we had some technical issues. I'd like to think we're pretty good coaches, but we're pretty naff at technical stuff, aren't we?
You're far better than me, but even you struggled last time round.
We struggled, gave up, and went for some lunch.
Yeah.
And now we're back on another day, and we're going to start again and see if we can do even better than last time. Not that we've listened to it back. Might be a load of rubbish. Don't know.
Most probably.
Let's crack on. I'll start. Question number 1. My son is fantastic in training, but doesn't have the same impact in his matches. How can I help him to reproduce what he does in training during his matches?
Great question. How great is it that they're training fantastically well and make a big fuss of that? And we've never put any emphasis on the outcome at our sessions, have we? And I think you've said a great quote in the past. I don't know if it's yours or somebody else's.
Probably not.
Can you remember it?
No. I will as soon as you start.
The matches are a blank canvas for the children to paint on.
Yeah, no, that was one of mine, Jeffrey. Well,
it's a very good one. Love it.
Yeah, so the important thing here is you'd rather that they were fantastic in training and not producing it than just being dog average at training or not very good at training. So take the positives. The child's obviously got it there, that just for whatever reason are not producing it when it comes to the matches, and that will come with time. Matches just really give you experience and is good obviously for decision-rich environments, and it's the actual game, so obviously you do need to play matches. But in terms of football development, training, if it's good training especially, far outweighs matches. And it's a case of basic mathematics really, Geoff. If you've got, even if it's 5-a-side and you've got 10 children, you divide an hour by that, and how long the ball's actually in play, people are always amazed that their child's probably only on the ball for about 1-2 minutes maximum. I think even professionals are only on the ball about three and a bit minutes on average in a match. So children's a lot less, which just physically isn't possible for them to develop as good footballers. They can develop over their hour lots of experience and get lots of different interactions, and obviously there's a nice randomness to matches, but in terms of actually getting good with a ball, it's not enough. So I'd take the positives that they're good in training and maybe try to get to the bottom of why they've got some sort of performance anxiety when it's coming to matches, but don't make too big a thing of it, or you could make it worse if you keep going on and on about it. It's obviously feeling some pressure from somewhere, would you think, Geoff?
Could well be that. It could just well be that they've played a lot less matches than they have done training, so it will just come in time, couldn't it? But again, I'd just be so excited that training's going really well and make a big fuss of that, and and eventually it will come. And the best players are always the ones that eventually have carried on showing up and kept training well, aren't they, over a period of time? Like you said, it's just basic maths.
Absolutely. There's plenty of players that have an impact in matches for various reasons, maybe because they're super quick, or they've got a really strong shot, or they're physically more developed than some of the other children, and they can have an impact in matches but be terrible trainers. And trust me, you'd want it the other way around, because eventually when the other children catch up, or learn how to deal with a quick player or to play against someone who's physical, they've still got those attributes, but others have worked them out, and yet they're not very good with the ball because they haven't trained very well. So better this way round than the other way around, and try to keep the pressure off them the best they can. Don't even mention it, I wouldn't. And a lot of children, Geoff, can get real het up about matches. They think that there's more importance on it than perhaps there is. And we've said it many times. Parents come alive when it's match time. They don't when it's training. You know, even at a training session, they're all chatting on the sideline, aren't they? Or sat in the car, or whatever it might be. And then as soon as it's like the end match, they all come out and they all watch, and unfortunately even shout out a few things. Maybe we might be getting onto that a little bit later, I think. So children automatically perceive matches as being really, really important to parents, and that just on its own can put enough pressure on that they don't want to make any mistakes, so they don't try things. Simple as that.
Yeah, maybe reinforce and encourage that the matches are there as entertainment as much as the result, aren't they? And just let kids go and try things and try and entertain the people that might be watching, rather than worrying about outcomes and scorelines. And I think that's very much the attitude of the England cricket team going into the Ashes at the moment. And I don't know if they've ever been in such good form, all those players, because they're just allowed to go out and just be themselves, express themselves, and play the crazy shots that they might not have been allowed to play in the past, because it might have resulted in a negative result and an outcome. But I would very much encourage the kids to go and express themselves and try and entertain.
If it was me, I would watch my child's training and then make a big deal of how good and how much effort that they've put into that training session. So reinforce that positive with as many positives as you can. Don't focus on any sort of training match they've had within that training, but the actual stuff they've done within the core of the training session. Just to re-emphasise that, and then not really make a big thing of the matches at all when they're coming up. Especially don't say things like, let's see what you do in training in matches today, and build it up. Just take pressure, go and enjoy yourself, go and express yourself, go and have some fun. I've seen what you can do in training, so go out there and play. Just enjoy it, and not pick out on any negatives during the match, especially for a while, and you might find it turns around pretty quickly.
Yeah, and if a coach has ever said to you in the past, just go out there and play and enjoy yourself, it makes you feel about 10 feet tall, doesn't it? It makes you feel your shoulders come up, chest puffs out. It makes you feel like a player, and that's probably the best advice you can give.
Oh gosh, even in that charity match that I played in last year, when the gaffer said just go out and play. So we know you can play, just go and enjoy yourself, express yourself, make others play. You feel 10 feet tall. He probably said it to everyone else as well. but that's good management. Right, let's go on to question number 2, and I shall ask this one. Charlie Webster continues to impress. Do you think you'll see the likes of him again? And for those of you who don't know, Charlie was one of our players from about the age of 5 to 10 when he got signed by Chelsea Academy, and he was there from under 10s or under 11s all the way through age groups, became a scholar, and then signed a professional contract. He's been on the bench once, maybe twice for the first team. Still yet to make an appearance, but he's flourishing in the Premier League 2, the PL2, and for England in all youth levels that he's represented them in. So, Geoff, do you think we'll see the likes of Charlie again? And I think it means us personally rather than in general.
Yeah, so this will be more localised question, I'm guessing, in our little rural community that we're from. I think this is a yes and no answer. So do you think we'll see the likes of him again locally? We'll see that potential walk through the door. Kids that are bouncing on the balls of their feet and just love having a ball at their feet and love the sessions, and love being a part of that process that you've delivered for years at Pezza Street Soccer. Whether or not someone can go on to get as close to their potential as that again, with the current ecosystem of local football, if you like, having changed over the last 10 years, I'm probably going to say no would be my answer, and you can probably go into a lot more detail as to why that is, Pez.
I agree totally, although I should say Charlie was a little bit special from the first time he walked in. He sort of bounced in, didn't he, on the balls of his feet, loads of enthusiasm, and it didn't take long to realise, wow, this kid moves well. Very, very good trainer. So touching on what we said before about being good at training, I mean, Charlie didn't play proper matches or official matches, used to say, until he was an under 9. So he just did nothing but Pezza's training for 4 years, and even when we did start a team up and enter a local league, we didn't do any team training, not once, all the way through. And bless them, the lads won everything, didn't they? Scored hundreds of goals. Do we think we'll see the likes of Charlie again? Like you said, we'll definitely have some Charlies bounce into the hall, and the potential will be there. The problem we have nowadays, and I think it's not just locally, but players that are individual training centres like ourselves don't tend to be able to keep hold of the kids for long enough for them to fulfill their development. So when we started, Geoff, we probably have a Charlie and all the others we had at that period staying for between 1 and 6 years, so school years 1 to 6, and that gave them such a platform and such foundations to then go on and be whatever they wanted to be. They could pretty much do anything with the ball, and then they could go and really learn the game. And now the way football's going is, with elite leagues and things starting up, everything seems to be about getting results and recruiting players. So our players become very good very quickly because they're working with the ball each individually a lot of the time, and then all the managers for the teams that are looking to improve and to recruit try and take our children out. I was going to use the word poach, but it's not poaching. They've got every right to. You know, they're good players, and it's just the way it is that then they end up playing for their friends on a Sunday, a JPL team on a Saturday, or an equivalent league, training with those teams at least 2, maybe 3 times a week, and something has to give. And because we're not a team, it tends to be us, which breaks our heart, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of a combination of what we discussed earlier, isn't it? Them going away thinking that playing with the best players in the local best grassroots league, where the scouts might be, is going to be the best thing for them to then progress up the ladder. But your theory, if you like, is no, stay with us and keep improving at the rate that you're improving at, and then you might be jumping out that middle bit where you might have a year to 18 months of far less touches of the ball, far less football or futsal interactions in the sessions, and then you're not in that accelerated learning environment
exactly
anymore, whether or not it's dressed up as it is because it's the link between grassroots and academy or whatever. The quality isn't there because kids aren't then pushing on from there as much as they were in the past when they were just doing what they were doing before. So if it wasn't broke, don't try and fix it.
Yeah, well, I think
and stay with it.
A lot of these teams are under pressure to win, because there's a lot of them now. Again, I think there's a question about this coming up as well, so we'll touch on it more later. But when the emphasis is about results and recruitment, then by default development goes out the window. You can't do everything, and you've got a set amount of time. So training tends to become more about organising a team to win a game of football. So recruiting the best players you can, finding a system that works for them, and organising them to win a game. Now that is polar opposite to developing children to become good at football. So if you're not doing any of that alongside the organising, you might get to an age where, school year 7, 8 and beyond, where you know what to do on a pitch, but you can't actually do it. You can't execute it, or someone else's plan if you're going moving up through the leagues and the levels, because you're simply not that good enough with the ball. So you need to build the foundations with the ball, get good at football, and not just know what to do on a pitch and where to stand, and maybe even how to receive the ball in certain areas and to get crosses in the box and all those sort of, I call them adult-like traits, where you just need to become a master of the ball. So then you can play pretty much to any manager's plan in the future. But people seem to skip that process, want to go straight into a league where it might look good, and they think that that's the best place for them. And really, and the proof's in the pudding, really, at the moment, it's not proved to be that way.
And this question's about Charlie Webster, and it's obviously about an elite athlete that's gone on to do really well in the game. But if you then strip it back down to the level behind that, and the level behind that, and the level behind that, I mean, there was kids at the same age group in their first session weren't bouncing into the hall with the same attitude and the same desire and the same aptitude to learning as Charlie. They were sat in the middle of a sports hall having a tea party, and within 3 or 4 years they're at and around the same level, playing at the same level as Charlie was, at the same age group. So at every level then it's going to then come back down, and then the players that are selected for these elite teams, the level's lower than it was before, and it just... So, yeah, no, I don't think we're going to see a Charlie again, but we're also not going to see the next level and the next level and the next level, I don't think, attaining the same levels that we were getting to, because it's all going to get much more watered down now.
I mean, if these managers are losing games, they're going to try and find out why, and it might be, because our centre-half's too slow. Right, well, let's get in a new centre-half. Not how can we develop that centre-half to learn how to deal with quick players. That might take too much time. So then the emphasis on can we recruit? And then, unfortunately, that poor boy or girl might be out in their ear on the bench and pushed out. So he's digressed a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I think they're just trying to say, is Charlie a phenomenon or is he a one-off?
Yeah.
And no, I don't think so. He had a great aptitude for training, but then so have a lot of other children. And it's not about getting to the level of Charlie, it's about fulfilling every child's own individual personal potential. And that's becoming harder and harder to do, just with the way football is nowadays and structured.
That's what I was trying to say, but you did it much more succinctly.
Well,
thanks,
I
Faith.
just took what you said and shined it up a little bit. Happy?
Yeah, that was well put. Thanks, mate.
No problem at all. Do you want to go with number 3?
Question number 3. What's better for my child's development, playing with the best players and winning, or playing with players with less ability and struggling?
Okay. Shall I go first, as you asked?
Yeah, go on.
I'm going to read it again in my head. Playing with the best players and winning, or playing players... In all honesty, you need to get a nice little balance of everything across a period of time, really. If everything's too easy, you're going to get a lot of the ball, which is great, but you're not going to get challenged. If everything's too difficult, not only is it frustrating and not so much fun, but you're not actually going to get on the ball enough to develop. I wouldn't worry too much about either, as long as your training's excellent. And again, that goes back to the question number 1 we've talked about. Training is the most important thing, and as Jeffrey so wonderfully put it, the matches are just the blank canvas where the children go and paint on and express themselves. So don't get too het up about it. If you're losing, so don't get too carried away with the highs, don't get too low with the lows. Think about the development of your child, and the development's done with training. So look at how good training is, not how professional it looks, because there's plenty of training that looks professional, Geoff, and when you actually analyse it, isn't particularly good for development. But have a look at how much contact time, purposeful contact time, your child's getting with a ball, and in the match time within the training, are they allowed to try things and express themselves and fail, and what's the training's attitude or the coach's attitude to mistakes and failure, and how do they pick the children up after they haven't been successful. Those little things are what's important, and I wouldn't worry too much again about the match time, although it's always fun to pick up a few tin pots, I guess, along the way. So a lot of parents like that, so they can get some social media posts, and the kids obviously like it. Who doesn't like winning a trophy? But I actually think in terms of resilience and character and experience, you are actually going to learn more in the struggle. You only learn in the struggle and the hard times. And how many times have we seen kids who play for really good teams win everything, then they come to one of our sessions, or a holiday camp even, and they can't get near the ball, or they can't win, and they can't handle it, can they, Geoff?
Yes, I think there's another question coming a bit later around this a little bit too, but I think it's nice to strike a balance between playing with good players and being able to not dominate, but be able to have it your own way sometimes, so you can work on both sides of the game. And I think it's you that's told me that in the past as well, and I couldn't agree more with it. I think at Pez's Street Soccer and at Wessex Futsal Club, we do everything in double age bands, don't we? So the last age group at Pez's is under 10s and under 11s, yeah. And then the first age group at Wessex is under 11s and 12s mixed together. So you get a year where you're stretching yourself and playing up a year and not having it your own way, and then a year where you're the leaders, the captains, the legends that are trying to drag everyone else's standards up with you. And every year I get to where are we now? We're in June, July time, aren't we? And almost towards the end of the sessions for the under 16s. And at the start of the year, I look at them and I think, oh, they're a long way off where the men's team are now. And then towards this part of the year, every group I can see, actually, now you look ready now, you're ready to kick on. And I think doing that the whole way through has really helped them get to that
being
point.
The youngest in one year, then the oldest in the room, then the youngest.
And every time that they become the youngest, I think, oh, they're going to struggle this year. They're going to really fight. And then a few months in, there's not that much disparity between the two age groups. And then they're almost catching them towards the end. And then it's time for the others to move on and for them to be stretched. So,
and the older ones in that situation learn, a bit of leadership, and they can be mixed in with the younger ones if they need to. And
some of this was thought out, and that was the plan, but I didn't think it was ever going to be as effective and as useful for everybody involved as it's worked out to be. So maybe that might be a way forward if you can find a club that maybe has double age bands and does it the same way.
Yes, I think that's touches on a lot of what we've already said, maybe even about Charlie. He did that from school years 1 to 6, and that certainly helped him. And of course, if a child's only coming in to us now for a year and disappearing, it might be, well, obviously it's going to be either the youngest one of that band or the oldest one in that 2-year age band. It's not anywhere near fulfilling the whole process, is it?
Exactly.
So they're like Jedi Knights who haven't passed their Jedi training. We always get onto Luke Skywalker, and
we love Star Wars, don't we? Analogies.
Star Wars. So yeah, I think that's probably answered that one the best we can. Question number 4. Do
you want me to do 4 as well?
Why not?
I saw a great video online of a basketball coach telling parents off for shouting out from the sideline. What are your thoughts about parents shouting instructions?
Well, you sent me this video, Geoff.
Yep.
And I think my reply was, I couldn't love this video more, love heart. So I've seen the video. I think it's excellent, and I wish at times in my career life I'd have had the confidence to do what this chap is doing in the video. And basically in the video, it's American basketball, and the youth coach has a bit of a pop at a parent, I think, for shouting out to their child to shoot, which is very common in football, or soccer as they say, as well. And my views on it are that anything that affects a child's decision making in a match is wrong. So do not do it, and that includes shouting out, putting pressure on them in the car on the way to the game, paying for goals, saying if you're man of the match today, or player of the match I should say today, we'll stop and get McDonald's on the way home. So anything that you're trying to do to get into your child's head that might affect their decisions. For example, if a child's on £10 for a hat trick and a teammate is in a better position, they're not going to pass to their teammate. They're going to try and shoot and bag their tenner. And if they do, they'll get their tenner, they're happy, and mum and dad have put on Facebook, oh, another hat trick for Tiny Tim today. Everyone seems happy. Very short term. In terms of long-term development, horrendous. I don't know what your thoughts are, Jeffrey.
Yeah, so I think this particular video, the child, it goes back to the last question a little bit. They look like the youngest, they're the smallest in the session.
Yeah, I think he even says that, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think Dad wants him to go for the layup. I'm not very familiar with basketball, although I've watched quite a few documentaries on it recently. And he's just never going to get a layup because everyone else is massive around him and to block and screen and whatever you do to stop them getting the basket is easy for the big players around this smaller player. So therefore, the child's actually worked that out for themselves and wants to get in and around. I don't know if it's called the key or what it's called in
Jeffrey,
basketball.
Such knowledge.
Getting in and around that area underneath the basket and set people up, basically. So if it was futsal, it would be a back post, square it, and take the goalkeeper out of the game. Bit of a FIFA move. So that's why the coach goes off on one, because the parent is doing exactly that. They're changing their decision making, and actually probably for an outcome that's never going to be successful, unless this child has a growth spurt at some point and bulks out because they were tiny. So again, if you were going on a futsal trial ever, I think 99.9% of futsal coaches, if they saw your child make a good decision to play at back post, that would be a big tick against your child. If they thought that they'd gone for a shot when the pass is a better option because you're a parent on the sideline telling them to get loads of goals or whatever and buy them at McDonald's or whatever the outcomes are that you're promising, then that's probably a big X, especially for a futsal coach, even more than a football coach, I would say, because it's a very much team-orientated game, and a back post finish is a futsal finish that everyone's very aware of in the futsal world. So it would be a massive one. It'd be a massive no-no.
There's a reason why parents at academies, all the ones I've been to or been involved with, there's a reason why parents aren't allowed to say anything during matches. Even if their parent's an ex-pro and might have played at a miles higher standard than the coaches there. It's confusing. It's off-putting. It adds pressure, and the coach or the manager might have given that child a specific instruction or a development challenge to do within that game that that parent doesn't know about, and that's done to progress their development and aid their development, and maybe part of a long-term plan. And you shouting out, shoot, score, tackle, get it away, clear it, whatever it might be, are all classic examples. Get into the player's head and might be not what the coach has asked for, because many parents shout out looking at it as getting a team result and a win, whereas you'd hope that the manager and the coach are looking at it as how can I best develop these players. And it might be that the defender in the team's got a lot of potential, but they keep hoofing the ball away, and the managers ask them, no, even under pressure, can you take the ball and try and play out from the back, get your head up, relax. And then that kid gets on the ball, mum and dad are shouting, get it away, clear it. It's confusing messages, and affects their decision making and ultimately their development. And we've talked about this before, but I have had this, haven't I, Geoff? And I'm always reluctant to say it, but I'm going to say it this time. It was Charlie, and it was his dad, and it was a match, and it was only an in-house match. And I'd asked Charlie, I think it was half-time, or if we played quarters, it was one of the breaks. I'd noticed that he was getting doubled up on by the opposition, 2 or 3 players. And so I asked him how he felt that could help the team. An intelligent lad said he can create space for other players to play in. So I said, okay, so now when you've got the ball, because you're good enough, Charlie, why don't you take it away from the goal and into the corners, and then that'll create space for someone else, and then you're good enough to maybe find them with the ball, with the cross. And as he was running into the corner with 2 or 3 opponents chasing him, his dad did shout out to him something along the lines of, where are you going, Charlie? It's in my book, by the way. I wrote a chapter on it. And I wasn't too impressed. I think I shouted out, can you leave him alone? And it didn't go down too well, did it? And then there was a lot of tension there left in the match, and it wasn't good. But we had a chat afterwards, went for a coffee and explained. And
I think it happened twice, didn't it? And you stopped the game during the game. I've never seen you do that before. Yeah. A bit like this basketball coach, actually, just stopped.
Yeah, because it was an in-house game with them. Was it the age group above? I think it was.
Well, I think they were still mixed at that time,
right,
so
okay.
They were probably playing against the age group below or whatever it was. Yeah. But that's exactly what happened. It was a very similar scenario.
Blew the whistle, stop. But again, I got to take some responsibility, because I should have told the parents beforehand, 1, not to shout out if they can help it, only encouragement, and 2, that I'll be giving them individual challenges that they won't know about, so it might not look quite as they think it should. And I didn't do any of that. So faults on all sides, but it's a good little story to highlight.
It's why academies spend a lot of time educating parents around this sort of thing, aren't they? Getting ex-players in to come and say what their experiences were. And we have had parents tell us, since they've heard it from their academy and an ex-professional coming in and talking about it, they get it now. But it shouldn't take that to get it, should it? Because you've been harping on about it for a long time. But
people often ask me, Geoff, why do you play music at your training sessions? And well, the cat's out of the bag now. It's so that I can just turn it up if there's a shouty parent. That's one reason why we have it in the matches. The other reason is it keeps a nice high tempo going for anything that we're doing that's a little bit repetitive.
The real reason is because it keeps a high tempo, it aids rhythm, timing and all that, and rhythm for the players whilst they're learning.
That is true.
But it is great for drowning out parents as well. Yeah.
If you ever see me turning it up during a match, then I should say, then you'll know. I have also seen, and I wrote a little note here over the years, even when parents know that it's frowned upon, and they might even realise some of the negatives around doing it, I have seen them get round it. In particular, I've written here, water bottle mums and dads. This is a trick that's been going on since I've started, I don't know how many years ago, where the player arrives either at training or at a match, and they don't put their drink with all the other children's drinks. Their parent keeps hold of it. And then when it's a water break, or half time, or if it's quarters, every quarter, the child has to go over to the parents to get some water, and then they'll receive advice and analysis on their performance.
Pep talks.
Pep talks, thank you, Geoff. And not Pep Guardiola talks. Just pep talks from mum and dad. So please don't be one of those. It might not be obvious for a while, but I've seen it so much. We know what you're doing. Don't do it. Just let them come over with their water bottle, put it with the rest of them, and it's their time. It's their time. We've, as adults, have had our time playing sports and doing what we want to do. It's their time now. Let them enjoy it and have that hour or whatever it might be to themselves. You don't need constant analysis.
It's a good parody or skit there, isn't it? The not Pep Guardiola talks.
Yes.
And
I finally hadn't finished the book. It'll be going in there. Chapter header.
What's it called when you rewrite a book and put it back out again? Just volume
hassle.
2. Yeah. But I think everything that we're discussing here is about coaches trying to redefine what success looks like for long-term development. So success to most people is going out winning a game on the weekend, but we're trying to find lots of cheats and hacks and tricks and ways of encouraging children to flourish where the scoreline actually doesn't matter. And if they're stood there with a water bottle, the reason being is because they're actually trying to get them back to winning and outcomes and going against what the coach is saying. So it's actually horrendous, isn't it? It's like the worst thing. You may as well not have the coach there if you're then just going to pull your kid over and give him one of their pep talks again.
Yeah, and I expect these pep talks have nothing to do with the team. It'll all be very much, why are you not shooting? Why are you not doing this? Or I suppose sometimes can be praise. Yeah, you're playing really well today. But I don't like it. Unfortunately, Geoff, in football, there's only a few, I think this is the right term, analogy, metrics to gauge success, perceived success. So if your child scores, that's a success. If they score a hat-trick, that's a bigger success. If they get player of the match, you can measure that. Measurable, that's probably the word I should have used. And if your team has won or lost. Whereas development is much more difficult to see because it's over a longer period of time.
What's the book called again?
Did you win, did you score? Yeah. Out soon, hopefully. So yeah, it's a lot of parents want those things because that's how they can judge black or white how their child's progress is coming along. And it could be that your child's scoring a load of goals because they're bigger and stronger and got a harder kick than everyone else, and actually, whilst the emphasis is on that, the potential of them being a really good centre midfielder or defender or a nice winger is going out the window because the focus is just on how many goals. How many times have you seen it, Geoff, at the weekend? Facebook in particular. Oh, there's Tiny Tim's 628th goal of his career, or his 33rd goal of the season, and you think, okay, he's 10 or 11.
I told you last time you're not allowed to say Tiny Tim anymore.
Oh, yes.
Because it's upsetting Tiny Tim.
Yeah, well, he's not tiny, but we have a parent of one of the kids who's called Tim, and he has put in a request that I stop referring to everyone as Tiny Tim. So, sorry, Big Tim, but Tiny's still there. Enough on that one?
Yeah, and if it's that outcome based, you're probably missing the child that's doing all the work that's getting your child those goals or whatever the outcomes are that you're getting excited on your Facebook post about. So try and just look a little bit deeper and maybe catch the things that long term are going to keep getting success and praise it. But yeah, I think that's enough.
Was that question still just on the back of the video, the basketball one?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Question number 5 next.
Cool. We went right off there, didn't we?
Sorry, mate.
Woo. Right. Question number 5. My turn, isn't it?
Yep.
What have you seen change over the years you've been coaching? And is it easier or harder now than when you started? Well, Geoff, we've been coaching pretty much, or children, similar time. Don't want to show my age, but I started actually coaching in 1997 with adults. But with kids, it's my 21st year. I know, I don't sound it.
1997. I think that was my first FIFA game, was FIFA 97.
Oh, I think mine was FIFA 98. But again, we digress. So, do we think it's easier than it was or harder? I mean, I'll throw it out there. It's easier on one hand, because obviously we are a lot more experienced and there's not a lot that we haven't seen. But harder in many other ways. Do you want me to highlight some of those, Geoff? Or do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, you go, and then I'll have a think whilst you're talking. Does that sound good?
Because luckily enough, I've made some notes.
Oh, top man.
So harder things that I've seen. Well, we've already talked about some of it. So for us personally, we're getting kids to a certain level. I'm thinking, they're on this trajectory, and we can now compare them to Charlie and Finn and Kean and Vaughan that are all full-time professional footballers now. And I'll tell you now, don't want to upset them, but there's plenty better than that come in now better than they were at their age, if that makes sense. But we used to get at least 2 from every age group a year sign at a pro academy. That's not the case anymore because they leave too soon. So parents, all the children themselves trying to take shortcuts to academies is actually harming their chances of getting to academies. So that's one thing. But in terms of the children themselves, a lot more children struggle with failure now than they used to. So they don't like losing at all. Not everyone, but the number has increased over the years. A lot of children now have a fixed mindset in terms of they don't like doing anything that they're not already good at, which is horrendous for development, because to get good at anything you need to be prepared to be a little bit rubbish or a lot rubbish at it when you start. So if you're only doing things that you're already good at, you're only going to improve at that, which is okay if you want to master that particular skill or turn or whatever it might be. But the percentage of that improvement is not as much as if you're starting something new, some different things that you're not so good at, and you fail at it loads and you're rubbish at it loads, and then you learn from those mistakes, and then you accelerate to learn whatever it might be you're trying to learn. So that's changed over the years. What else have I got here? Parents wanting more instant success and gratification. So we've touched on that a lot. So with social media in particular, if a child hasn't scored or their team haven't won at the weekend, then there can be a lot of miserable parents out there now that can't get that nice. So proud of Tiny Tim. Sorry, Tiny Tim. So proud of Tiny Tim this morning. Another hat-trick and a great win for the team. Go Reds, or whatever it might be. You see it all the time. And if the team's lost, or the child's not scoring goals, or even if the team's won and your child might play in defence and gets none of the glory, yet the kids that have scored are the ones that are getting all the praise and the social media posts, there's a fear of missing out comes in. And so there seems to be this urge to get this instant success rather than thinking about the children's long-term development. Jeffrey?
Yeah, so I'll try and sum that up.
Yeah, sorry, because I wrote notes. When I write notes, I waffle on a bit.
So, culturally, do you think there's a lot more people that feel entitled to success, and that translates to football as my child should be in an academy because that's...
I don't know about entitled, but they see it a lot more now. So when I was young, I knew 2 or 3 players in my whole youth career that had ever had a trial, and they didn't even get in. And they were the best players, and you all knew it and accepted it. You'd almost be like, fair play, they've had a trial, I know why, because they're really, really good. Now, anyone that can half kick a ball is either been at a development centre or in a shadow squad or in an elite team or an elite league or an elite...
Yeah, something that's dressed itself up to be something that maybe it's not necessarily that. So,
and now the difference is all of those things are now put on social media. So you're comparing your child to other children who've got tracksuits from this new wonderful place that's called themselves, I don't know, elite something or other. Got to be careful because I don't want to name a real one. But, and they think, oh, perhaps my kid's better off there. And then when they're there, they think perhaps my kid's better off here, and that tracksuit looks nice, and they've had a few children go on to be at a professional academy, and you end up taking the children round the houses, more clubs than Tiger Woods, as they say. And actually, as we've been saying since the start of this podcast, it's the training that's the most important thing. Find somewhere where the training's really, really good, and the coach really, really cares about the child's development, and if you can, do a little bit individually at home and see where it takes the child. Don't worry about all the frills and bits around that go along with it. The Facebook posts and the wins and the tin pots. I've forgotten what the question was. What changes have we seen over the year?
And is it, which number is it? 5?
5. And that's another thing.
Is it harder now than when you started? So
it is harder in terms of those things, because we don't get to keep the children long enough to fulfil their development. There's more choice for parents out there, which you'd think would be a good thing, but they tend to end up taking them around all the clubs to see how the clubs are, and if there's one coach that sees some amazing potential in your child that no one else has and can put them on the right pathway to instant success. So it has become a lot harder in those terms.
And I suppose when we started out, the coaching courses were very, I don't really know how to describe it, but they were kind of bland, weren't they? There wasn't, it didn't really feel like you were going to go and then help children. And I think we both found, kind of when we found what we found and started doing what we were doing, I think we probably both felt exactly the same way, in that it was something that was really going to have a positive impact on children in the local area and help them thrive and develop with all the individual ball mastery stuff. I think as time's gone on, lots of people have tried to dismiss individual training and coaching, so that's kind of, it doesn't really worry me, but it's tough to see people do that.
And they can back it up because there might be a team that they're involved with that's winning things.
Yeah, but I think we can also back it up, and people will say, well, where's the evidence that individual ball mastery and isolation drills is the thing that people like to slate it as? And I think, well,
so naive when
we've got lots of anecdotal evidence of children that have done pretty much nothing but this and then gone on to be very successful.
Well, Charlie's one.
From an area that has had very limited success at these levels in the past. So I would say there's plenty of evidence if you look deep enough, but also if you go into it deep enough, I don't understand how anyone can't see what we see when we deliver these sessions, and I'm going to say outcomes that we get, but with the development outcomes, if you like, individual development outcomes that we get. So there's so much more information out there for helping coaches now, but it can also be overwhelming. But there's also lots of people that want to dismiss what we've done for years that's been successful, and I don't know why you'd want to dismiss it without finding out a little bit more about it.
Because they don't understand it. So it's
possibly
easier to dismiss that. I mean, in our area, Geoff, we haven't had a professional player of note since I think Nigel Spackman, who played for Rangers, Chelsea and Liverpool. Don't quote me on that. But back in the late 80s, early 90s, and kids love football in this area.
Yeah.
And through what we do, which is individual personal training and development, we've had over 50 sign at professional academies, and now we've been doing it long enough, we've got 4 full-time professionals. And okay, they have not done much yet, but there's still time for that.
There are other ways to get there as well. I'm
Absolutely.
not dismissing anybody else's coaching methods and styles and things like that, but the amount of times I see people get really protective and about what they're doing and dismissive about the type of training that we do, it probably did used to upset me. I couldn't care now. I couldn't care less, really, what other people think, because I feel like we've done it. I don't feel like I've got anything to prove to anybody. I don't know if you do or not, but I feel like we did once feel like we were on a mission to prove what we do is actually really good.
Yeah, it just seems like everyone was starting to get it, and then these sort of elite places and elite leagues pinged up everywhere, and then it's suddenly become about results and recruitment and a rat race.
Yeah.
And I think has damaged.
Could have been so much more, couldn't it, if it had been...
It's almost gone back to what it was at the start now.
Yeah.
With just getting a group of players together, organising them to win a game of football. It seems to have gone full circle back to that now, but with shiny badges and saying the right things and nice tracksuits.
Yeah.
It's controversial, isn't it, Jeffrey?
But for us, it's true, isn't it? It's what we've seen, it's what we've experienced. We've been on the ground doing it for I don't know how long.
Like you say, Geoff, there are other ways. I'm not just saying it or even doing this podcast to advertise what we do, because there's people all over the world that listen to it. We're a very small soccer school in a very
try
small
and
place.
dive deep into all types of coaching as well, don't we? And have a look at... I think there's a bit of everything involved in all of our sessions, to be honest. Like, what's our topic?
We've got a lot of Coerva stuff involved in it, and we went and got qualified at Coerva.
Yeah.
And that's massive all over the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of pro academies use it. So yeah, we take lots. Obviously, I've got a background, and so have you, in Brazilian soccer schools. So we've got influences from there. But a lot of it's not rocket science. It's purposeful practice, individually with the ball a lot of the time, and then your matches are decision-rich environments when you can do that through constraints and conditions, and contact time with the ball, purposeful contact time with the ball.
Purposeful, but the word purposeful with the contact time with the ball is the bit that I don't think people get when they see when they're slating individual
1,000 toe taps or synchronized training and stuff. I get that. And we put a random element to everything and progress it and visualize things
and stretch it and
go through the stages right up into the point where we can you now try that unopposed, opposed, and then in a match. But it's a long process. Until
you've been in one of those sessions and seen it actually working, though, it must be hard to understand. But we've been doing it for I don't know how long. It's a long time, isn't it?
Well,
together.
This is the frustration. So you'll be doing that process with a child who's flourishing, doing really well, and then you'll get the text that says, "Oh, Tiny Tim's leaving now. Thank you for everything you've done. He's joined this team, playing in this league," and you think, no, honestly, like they were on my mental list for ones to watch for the future, and sad to say it, but you've seen them in 2 or 3 years, and they're no good at football anymore.
And probably don't enjoy it anymore.
Possibly, because of the pressures and things that they've been under. It's difficult, and for parents, it's an absolute minefield. Which again, not a plug, but it's why I wrote the book, because it is a minefield, and parents put their child into what they think's the best place for their child, and it's not always as easy or as black and white as that. I think we should move on, Geoff. Yeah.
In short, the coaching's got easier because we know more. But the personal things have got harder because we know more.
And I almost wish sometimes I could go back to being naive coach who was just on a thirst for knowledge. Because once you get a little bit of knowledge, it can become not as fun anymore, I guess. Right.
Question number 6.
Can you pick me up now, Geoff?
Question number 6.
Goodness gracious. We're only halfway through. Question number 6. Let's try and be a bit speedier. I've seen an ad for a training app that comes with a mat so that children can practice at home. Do you think this type of training works? Possibly a nice one to have after what we've just said, Geoff, about isolated practices, because that's what this is. I've seen it. It's a mat with lines on it and numbers, and they plug into an app and it shows them how to do the skill following the lines. It's all very one-dimensional. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
As always, it depends what you want to get out of it. If it's for footwork and for quickening up neurological pathways from the brain to the feet, that's great. It's going to give you attributes that will help your child become better at football. But no child's ever going to have one of those and then just train with that and become a better player. So it's a training aid rather than any sort of shortcut to success or to make your child suddenly wonderfully good at football.
I'd be interested to give it a try and work it out for myself, because I'm one of those people that if I do it, I might really get it, and then
it's just you're limited with space and you're limited with the progression.
Yeah.
So you could master an individual,
but
like an L turn or a
wake up and do 10-15 minutes of that in the morning, and
Absolutely.
Somebody else isn't doing that 10-15 minutes every morning. Add that up over a child's lifetime, and I bet you there's a more confident, skillful, creative person there
with quick feet, can move the ball quickly.
I sometimes think people think creativity is just something that's natural and magic, like you put them on a football pitch, give them the ball once in every 100 touches of the ball, and suddenly they'll create something magical. And I can be less believing in that. I think you've got to add things up together and put them together and take them apart again and try them and make mistakes, and this didn't work for me, but I'm going to add this in and that does work for me. And so creativity looks like that rainbow flick or a flip flap cannon or something magical that someone's done in the game that's beat a player and got success, but you don't see all the work that goes on underneath it, do you?
I think creativity sometimes needs decision rich environments. So this is great for techniques and gives you a great foundation and a platform to be creative. A skill actually just means taking a technique and doing it purposely in the right place. So you aren't getting that opportunity watching the TV with a mat, but you're giving yourself the very best chance through repetitive practice to being able to do that, or have the confidence to do that, whatever moves you're learning in a match or a trainer match in a decision-rich environment. So I think it's probably a good idea. I quite like it. Yeah. But very limited in terms of...
And it'll only work if the child wants to do it and is enthused about getting that mat out and trying these things out. If you're trying to force a mat onto a kid and saying, you must train at this for 15 minutes a day because Geoff said this on a podcast, that isn't going to work either, because they're not going to see why they're doing it. They're not even going to want to do it. And I think those two things are massive.
Just out of your comfort zone, don't you?
And if a child gets that mat, they want to do it, and they can see why in the future it might help them down the line because they put the work in, then that's really powerful. And if there was no credence to these types of things, a boxer wouldn't get on a speed bag.
I was going to get to the boxing in a minute.
Were you?
Yeah, you've stolen my thunder.
But they wouldn't know, would they?
No.
And they've been doing that since almost the beginning of boxing.
Well, yeah, I mean, if a boxer just did skipping, which they do a lot of, or just did the speed bag, or even going further and doing pads, and they do patterns, don't they, on the pads? If they just did that, they're never going to be a good boxer, but they'll have the skills which help them when they're sparring to then become a better boxer. So, and if a boxer only does skipping, they're only ever going to get good at skipping.
Yeah.
So, but it's part of a bigger picture that a lot of people don't see, and they skip straight to sparring. So if a boxer went straight into sparring, they'd be getting experience and be getting a lot of thumps in the head, but they wouldn't be improving as a boxer because they're not doing all the individual elements that can help them to springboard the other parts, like the sparring, and in football, like your matches.
How easy is it for coaches that only believe in, I can't even remember some of the terms, but like basically doing training that looks like a match, to dismiss a mat and a ball and a TV because there's no decisions to be made in there, and so that basically would say there'd be no benefits to doing that at all, because you'll have to learn that L turn against a player.
So if no one shouts out at a boxer, stop skipping, stop getting your feet faster, stop getting your hands faster.
And that's one of the things that it really does infuriate me, or it did. It probably doesn't bother me now, because we're kind of over it, aren't we? But it's so easy to dismiss that mat and the ball without trying it, without seeing a child enjoy it, understand why it might benefit them, and then get some decent results from it. And why dismiss that if it works for somebody?
I think you hit the nail on the head with it. I'm going to try and sum it up. I think if your child has asked for one of these mats and you can afford it, get it.
Yeah.
Do not buy one without your child knowing and thrust it upon them. You could maybe show your child the mat and see what they think, and if they want one, great. But if it's your idea, it's not going to work. If it's their idea, it's got half a chance of being used enough to actually have an impact on their neurological pathways and quicken up their feet. I'm sure it does other things too. I haven't had one.
No.
But through 2 years of lockdowns, we did this stuff at home via Zoom sessions, and it does work.
Yeah.
Just without a mat.
I guess the lines are there to help paint pictures and...
Right from the start,
Yeah.
and then you progress and progress.
I think there's something very similar with cricket and learning where to place your feet for a drive and a back foot defensive and different shots that... again, for me, I don't think I'm the type of learner that sees somebody move and do something and gets it. So it wasn't until I was in my late teens when I started coaching and I was asked to coach the Matthews drop the shoulder and go the other way.
The Paul Matthews. A friend of ours, for those of you.
Very slightly older Stanley Matthews. Yeah. And I'd never done that movement in my life. I'd never dropped my shoulder and tried to go the other way, probably because I've got no pace and there would have been no point in me trying to do that, and I'm balancing a defender and trying to run around them. So I had to really, really break it down for myself before I could even try and coach it, because I couldn't go, here's the Stanley Matthews move, everyone copy this.
Yeah, it's
and
different
then
learning styles,
fall over the ball. So I had to really think about some of those movements, which is why I'm not bad at coaching the Stanley Matthews now, probably, but because it would have been very similar to almost breaking the movements down into that mat.
I was the opposite. I was like, oh, what's Gazza done there? Get me a ball, I'm going to try that, and then I'm going to go out and try it against my friends. So I would see, copy, and then mess up and learn from the mistakes, but keep at it. Right, we better push on, really. We're not ploughing through these very quickly, are we? So, Geoff, this one's for you, so I will ask it. Geoff, do you have any ideas on how futsal could be grown in this country? And if we could have the shortened version, that would be great.
How could futsal be grown in this country? I'd love to see more county FAs provide a lot more futsal leagues for people to play in.
For those of you who don't know, futsal's the FIFA-approved indoor version of the game with a slightly heavier weighted ball that stays on the floor, five-a-side, and lots of varying rules like kick-ins and fly keepers and things like that. And it's I don't think there's anything better for decision-rich environments for children's development. But Geoff not only has Wessex Futsal Club that has a youth development, but they've also got a men's team playing in the top flight of English football, Tier 1. And sorry, Geoff, to butt in there.
Pez's street soccer feeds into the youngest age group, so you look after...
Because they tend to have the attributes as well, don't they?
So Pez looks after the school years 1 to 6. They get very good with the ball at their feet, and then they can come and do their kind of futsal team training, plus some more ball at your feet.
Which all helps them to be better footballers.
Yes, it
so
does.
Don't switch off at this point.
So the simple answer would be just county FAs to provide more futsal games, programmes, matches, tournaments, as much stuff as you can for all the age groups, so that kids get to experience what it really feels like playing the proper rules. One
of their trophy events that they have to have every year in their leagues could be a futsal event. It takes a bit more organising because you need a sports hall.
And why not do it through the winter months when pitches are waterlogged and kids aren't playing much football anyway, and parents are getting frustrated because they keep waking up on a Saturday or Sunday morning with a text message to say game's off.
Yeah, agreed. I'm going to throw it a bit further out there. I think futsal will grow instantly, well not instantly, but massively, quickly, if the pro clubs got involved. And I'm just looking at what they've done with women's football, and I think women's netball as well. So they got all the pro clubs involved. I mean, when I first new women's football. There was teams like the Doncaster Bells and things like this, which will probably be the equivalent to your Wessex and things. And then suddenly you had your Chelseas, your Liverpools, your Man Uniteds. Some got into it sooner than others. They got a bit of TV coverage, got a bit of money towards them, made it more professional, and it soon accelerated. So if you had a futsal league of your Chelseas, Man Uniteds, Man Cities, etc., etc., it would get people watching for a start, and it could be a mixture of scholars, or academy players that play, or players that aren't getting a game for their club. That I just think there'd be a way where it could benefit the clubs to give their players training, to help them develop, plus be a really, really good spectacle to watch. I mean, people could then tune in and watch Charlie Webster playing futsal, think, oh, he really is a good player, he's coming through, can't wait till he gets a game in the first team, type thing. And he's getting really good futsal development to aid his football development.
And the academies of all those clubs could link into their local decent futsal clubs, and it could be a really good aftercare package for some kids that maybe have dropped out of the academy because of different things where their attributes really suit futsal, and then it rebuilds their confidence back up, because that's normally kind of, I don't want to say we get used for, but it happens quite a bit that somebody drops out of an academy and then they come to Wessex for a bit to basically build their confidence back up again before joining another team again. So, and
even if it hasn't got players that are registered with the club, it could be a place for players that have been released.
Yeah.
So it could be a whole released player program from academy all the way through, and they could put it on the TV, especially this time of year. Imagine having players that have just been released from Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, Man City, and so on and so forth, playing a summer futsal league where everyone is craving for a little bit of football because the season's finished. I would tune in to watch Liverpool v Everton futsal, or Man United, Man City, played by players that have been released. You get loads of scouts there to watch it. You get a bit of TV interest, which creates money, and could really help some of these kids that have been released as well. Go down a different pathway, help them with maybe some coaching badges and things along the way. I don't know. I just think there might be a relatively simple solution to grow it, and then that would feed down to grassroots level.
Yeah, I'd quite like to see all young children start out in futsal as well. So rather than, do they start 5v5 anyway for grassroots football now? So
under sevens.
That, for me, that really should be futsal anyway, rather than being out in the freezing cold through the winter months with 6, 7, 8 year olds. I don't know what age it starts.
Yeah. So from what we've said today, having a under sevens team that rarely gets to play during the winter, and then when they do, having parents shouting out from the sides and coaches that just want to win. Scrap that.
Get them indoors in a nice environment, playing futsal, developing really quickly.
And becoming really good at football.
And then the other thing that I always think would be great for the game of futsal, but for football as well, and it's not just in this country, but it would really grow the game in this country, is if it was an Olympic sport, and maybe they scrapped football as an Olympic sport, because we've got a World Cup, we've got a Euros, we've got all these tournaments that are going on.
Or add to it, maybe not.
Yeah. But how good would that be? Maybe, Well,
what did I hear the other day? They're trying to get involved in Olympics, and they think they can. Oh, that's going to bug me. But I remember the guy saying, well, they've got breakdancing, so I don't know why they wouldn't have what we're doing.
Futsal would be such a good Olympic sport, wouldn't it? I mean, basketball's massive.
Well, I think the viewing figures for Olympics has gone down, especially in this country. I mean, it sort of obviously peaked for the London 2012, but since then I think they've plummeted. But you get people tuning in to watch the futsal.
Every top level game's exciting, because let's say you're 3-1 down with 3 minutes to go. Quite often the team will go fly keeper, where the keeper comes over the halfway line and turns it into almost a 5v4. Really high risk. You might get a goal, but you're just as likely to concede. And teams really go for it towards the end of a game. And the amount of times they end up big finals in extra time and penalties, and it's just so exciting. We went out to Barcelona to watch Barca v Inter Movistar, didn't we?
Yeah, the two big teams.
4 or 5 years ago, was it now?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem that long, but...
And it was so exciting. The crowd were amazing. Absolutely brilliant it was.
I think that game finished 3-3, didn't it?
But for all the reasons we love it for children's development, so more shots, more tackles, more affordances for action, more goals, more chances, etc., etc. Those reasons accelerate children's football development are also really exciting.
Yeah.
So they're exactly the same reasons for the adults as it is.
You
for
said
the kids.
about a few times today a decision-rich environment, and I think that's an environment where you make lots of mistakes, and you quite often get that because it's such a high, fast-paced game with lots of close contact and not a lot of space to play in. So,
and Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, the list is endless. Players came from a futsal background. So cool.
Question number 8.
That was the futsal show with Geoff Bonner. Right, question number 8. Yeah, we've got 3 left. Let's see if we can get through these sharpish if we can, but still add some value, Jeffrey. Am I asking or are you?
I'll do it. It's a
Go
long
on
one.
then, mate.
My child is 8 years old and regularly gets left on the bench for his team. He's quite small for his age and often doesn't get as much playing time in the bigger games. His friends all play there and he wants to stay, but we are worried about his development. Can you give me some advice, please?
This is a tricky one. Again, I'll go back to what we've said many times in this episode. The training's the most important thing. So as long as he's getting plenty of time during training and in his developing, that's the most important thing. If he's not worried about being on the bench, just wants to be part of it, and the training's good, then I can't see too many red flags. But it's definitely a chat that should be had with the manager as to why they're on the bench and to how they're helping him to develop and improve so that one day has got a chance to play in that team or certainly in another one.
Yeah. So, a couple of things. Have you got parent blinkers, and are they on the bench more than anyone else, or are you just noticing it every time it's your child in particular and not actually working out? We have had parents that stand there with a stopwatch in the past, haven't we, and then
Still get it wrong.
Gone mad when they've had a minute less by accident because the ball went out of play.
Yeah, and it is difficult for managers to keep on top of it sometimes.
But if they genuinely are left on the bench a lot more than everybody else, then if I was a parent of an 8-year-old that was stood there watching my child being put on the bench at 8 years of age, I'd be pretty upset, if I'm being honest, and
yeah, well, it sounds like they
want to solve that.
The answers are all in there, really, or the keys to it is, they're not happy, otherwise they wouldn't be asking the question.
Yeah.
And they're saying he's quite small, so obviously they're blaming that he's quite small. Maybe they've been told that that's why he's on the bench, because he's quite small. I think the problem is he likes it and wants to stay.
Yeah.
Because if that wasn't in there, I'd say get them out, go and find somewhere where they can play.
Yeah.
I've said that the matches aren't that important, but it's the game, and that's what we all love, and why the kids play and why they train is to get better at the actual match. So the kid's got as much right as anyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
To play, and if it's not at that team, it should be at another one. Crikey, 8 years old, there should be a rule that they all have equal playing time anyway, in my opinion. Or at least an unwritten rule within teams. And I think there are some really, really brilliant ones out there that do that.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly equal playing time, because there are different positions, and sometimes we've done it, haven't we, where the person who's likes to sit at the back a bit more and is a bit more unselfish for the team plays more, because they're being unselfish for the team,
and no one else wants to play there.
No one else wants to do it,
that
so
child's going to play there, they're going to play a bit more than you.
Exactly that. So there's some exceptions to that rule, but generally people shouldn't be coming off feeling like why are they sat on the bench.
I get it from certain managers' point of view, and I've been there myself. It could be any sort of game, but in particular maybe a cup game or against your local rivals or something. And even at that age in a trophy tournament, you might be playing your crosstown rivals or something, and you're winning 2-1. There's a few minutes left, and it's Tiny Tim's turn to go on, and Tiny Tim is tiny, and you think if this child goes on, it's not their type of game. We could well lose. And unfortunately, I've been there, and I've had to grit my teeth and do it. And I actually did it in a cup final with a child, and it was their turn to be rotated on, and I thought, this is where we give it up, and we won. The child came on and played well. So you never know. So if your managers and coaches listening, you've got a moral responsibility really to play the kids that are in your squad. That doesn't mean you should move them on either if they're not part of your plans, but how can you develop that child to fit into the team, especially if they enjoy it and they want to stay? It is a tricky one for everyone, apart from the kid, it seems, in this one, who's not too bothered. So, let's have it right. Let's get the balance right with it all. But have a conversation with the manager. Ask questions. Give them your concerns. And how can you all help your child get more minutes on the pitch, which is what everyone wants in that situation.
I can't lose sight of the fact that it's an 8-year-old, and probably 2
years
years earlier they're probably turning up to the sessions with a teddy bear. Like,
I know, it is ridiculous. It's all gone a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I would like to see this child move if things don't happen and get some playing time. Enjoy the game while it lasts and while they're enjoying the enthusiasm of football. And they're not young for long. I know that.
Yeah.
My child's a teenager now and doesn't play football anymore. Plays futsal with you, Geoff, which is great, but doesn't play football anymore. And you think back to it and think, if I could go back, I'd probably just try and enjoy it a bit more. So enjoy it now.
He's one that's in the younger age group of a double age band, and it's really benefited this year and doing really well.
He's got a chance to be a pro. Right, let's move on very, very quickly. Question number 9. Which is better for a child's development? A new coach at the start of each season, or the same coach all the way through the youth age groups? I actually think that is an unbelievably brilliant question. I'm not sure I have the answer, so I'll bat it over to you, Geoff.
It's such an obvious answer, but it's going to depend on each individual coach, isn't it? Like,
there's
if you're stuck with
if
you're stuck with a rubbish coach the whole way through, then no, you'll be desperate to change at the end of the season. And there might be some real benefits of having a different coach every season, bringing you different things,
different ideas, different training methods, and no favouritism for certain players.
Sometimes it's just really nice, even with the young age groups, just to get a new buzz again, isn't it? A bit like Premier League managers changing over all the time, isn't it? Like, they normally get a little bounce back for the next few games, and it can be really exciting working with somebody different. But
again, I love the sound of that. But some of the most successful teams, I'm not talking about players, are the ones that have had the same group and the same manager, or maybe same sort of coaching setup from under 7s all the way through to under 16s.
And there's got to be something really important psychologically about that, about it being a safe place.
Yes.
Like, they know they're not going to get ditched or feel like they've been ditched, if you like, by their coach. So there must be something really important with that, because they've always had the most team cohesion. The kids have always seemed the happiest to me. Like,
and no trials every summer and stuff, which puts pressure on them.
Which is...
Do you know, just getting off topic slightly, I have 2 kids not turn up at an after-school club on Monday because they were going for trials, and they were trialling for a team that they already play for. And I couldn't believe it. But anyway, sorry, I had to get it off my chest.
Yeah, so it is a great question, but unless you know every individual coach involved, and I would probably rather have had a football journey like our good mate Eggy's team, where they pretty much started all together with you. Eggy took them on the following season. Yeah. And they stayed together all the way up to under 16s. Yeah,
they went on tours together and they won so much. They won the Europa Cup. They
just had the best time.
Champions on various occasions.
Best time ever every season, didn't they?
And they lost Finn and Kian and Joe Rogers to pro academies. Sanjay to a pro academy. And they replaced them, and they never lost that togetherness, bond, team spirit, which... obviously they were a good team and they were producing.
Nice parents, all got along.
And they all got it. And I mean, that's perfect scenario. Well, I think a perfect scenario would be to have that, but then to maybe bring in a different coach every now and again to freshen it up, which might be easier said than done.
Yeah.
But if you can... when I was a chairman of a football club, I liked to have a manager that stayed the same, but I liked them on training nights to go around and coach a different age group. And it didn't really work because not everyone bought into it. And as the club got bigger, not everyone trained at the same venue on the same night. So you couldn't just tip up and go, Eggy, tonight I want you to take a session for the under-7s, which was great in theory. And we did do it, and it did really help and freshen it up and was good for the coach's personal development. But when they start getting a bit older and they're going for Wiltshire Cups and things like that, there's too much pressure for them to help their team to win the game at the weekend, and they might not think, and the parents might not think, that them going and helping out with the under 7s or 8s is going to help their age group win at the weekend. So I get it, but if you can mix it up a little bit, mix your coaches around the age groups, you'll be surprised what a injection of enthusiasm that can give to all the players and the coaches.
Yeah, the question is about which is better for my child's development.
Right,
so
okay.
For development, it might well be freshen up the coaches and
but
having maybe a consistent manager the whole way through, like your Eggy, who was absolutely brilliant and the kids loved him at every single age group.
And a big
every
shout out
step
to Butch, his assistant.
Yeah,
He
of
did
course.
Amazing as well.
And Simon was involved as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
There was a whole community of people, wasn't it? That dragged it the whole way through. It was amazing. Question number 10.
Yes. Wow, the last question. We're almost there, Jeffrey. Are you going to ask it?
Yeah. My son loves futsal, and we can see the benefit it has had on his football development. He's going into secondary school next year, and we're worried that if he wants to fulfil his dreams of being a footballer, then he should now focus solely on football and join a second football team. Any advice would be gratefully appreciated.
Well, you're obviously Mr. Futsal, but it's a football-related question, really, isn't it? I would say it's very difficult when you don't know the child and the situation and what their teams are they're going to, but I would say don't try and chase something, don't try and fix something if it's not broken. So if everything's going great at the moment and they're playing futsal and football and they're progressing and developing and enjoying it, and don't go chasing something that might not be there by giving up either of those things. I wouldn't suggest that they gave up football to concentrate on futsal, or the futsal team to join a second football team. I see this a lot, where parents think if they're playing for a Saturday and a Sunday team, they might have more chance of progressing as a footballer and being scouted.
Because it's football and football for football.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And just mathematics, if you're playing 40 games a season instead of 20, you're going to have more chances to be spotted by a professional scout. So it looks to me like to do that, you're actually looking for a shortcut to success rather than staying on the pathway to success, which they could well already be on. So I would speak to everyone involved, including the child, in that process, but I would err on the side of caution. It's a bit difficult for you, this one, because you're in it and you get this a lot. So
I do see it a lot.
So you're a great person to have, obviously, for one side of it, but trying to take the emotion out of it might be tricky for you. Don't know what you think?
Yeah, well, I've got parents that have stuck all the way through that will say, if you're going to drop one or the other, and I'm not saying that you should do either because both can complement each other brilliantly. If you're going to drop one or the other, if you drop your football and focus on your futsal, you'll go back to football a better player. If you drop your futsal and focus on your football, you'll go back to futsal a worse player.
Yeah, I can see that. You might go back to football. If you drop futsal and stick at football, you might be slightly more experienced, but you're not going to be as good a footballer as if you carry on playing futsal.
And I'd back that up with lots of people I've seen go and do it, where they've actually stopped their futsal for a year, then come back, and I think they've stopped enjoying their futsal because they're not as good as they might have been, and they can feel it and see it, and that others have progressed as well. So my advice would be, if you want to be a great football player, do some futsal alongside your football.
Because of the reasons already said.
Yeah.
More affordances for action, decision-rich environments, you need quicker feet, you make more mistakes maybe, so you accelerate your learning. The list goes on and on and on. Build your confidence. You learn to get your head up quicker. I mean, literally the benefits are... I don't know what the word is.
I mean, when you do play a lot of futsal, then you go on a football pitch, it just feels like you're out in space. Like, you just feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. That's how much time and space you've got.
Yeah, and it can be a bit of a struggle to start with, to adapt, because you're like, wow, I can do anything with this ball. I've got so much time.
It's a different kind of pressure, realising that you can do what you want, almost, isn't it? Yeah, I agree with that. But I've
adapt very quickly.
Yeah, rather than going back the other way, which is...
As we started this podcast, we'd rather it was there.
Yeah.
And then, you have to learn how to use it than it not be there at all.
So I'm obviously going to have a futsal bias, but I'm going to say carry on doing what you're doing, please, because your futsal on one night a week or whatever they're doing, and football on the next day.
Well, it sounds like they've got the perfect balance at the moment.
Yeah, and you don't need to chase something.
Yeah, chase
for
something
the sake
that's
of
not
chasing.
there, which might damage.
It will be to the detriment in the long run, in the next 2 years, I reckon, for that person's football development, if you just focused on football.
The trouble with anything is you can only connect the dots looking backwards. So it's guesswork, isn't it, for parents at the moment, and they never quite sure what's best, as none of us are for our children. We want to make the right decisions.
And if this is somebody locally, I don't know if it's local or if it's...
I am not allowed to name names, Jeffrey.
Okay.
Well, I am. I can't remember.
If it's somebody locally...
I think it is, yes.
Then they're going to be a good football player because they've been doing Pezza Street Soccer, and they're probably being begged by another football team to go to their football team.
Yeah,
but in 1 or 2 years...
with another question we have.
1 or 2 years' time, they won't have been doing their futsal and the Pezza's coaching that has got them to that level that a team's begging for them to go and do more. So, I mean, would you rather be begged to play playing for a football team than getting released because you started trialling other children, which seems to be the story?
Very controversial, but I think playing football can very rapidly suck a player back into being average.
Yeah. If
they've been doing all the right things and then they stop doing those to go and play just football, depending on how the training is. It's not everyone, but I think it can really... If the training's focused on results and organising the team rather than development, your child can get sucked into being very average very quickly and just fit into some manager's plan of how they're going to win a game of football. It's not a very positive note to finish it on, is it?
No.
Can we finish with a positive, Jeffrey?
It did finish very positively last time, didn't it?
Do everything. Do futsal. But as with everything, you have to get the balance right. And I think with this question, you've probably got the balance right. And as we ended the last podcast, how was it, Jeffrey? It was going to be my tagline. I've forgotten already. Just remember, football's not that important, but children are. And that's my final word. Don't forget that this podcast was brought to you by Dimensions Carpentry and Construction, a friendly family-run business for turnkey refurb projects based in Andover. Geoff, we got through it. Bit of a marathon. But it was good. I think we did all right.
Completed it, mate.
Well, thanks as always. And hopefully on the next show we'll have our resident psychology expert, otherwise known as a psychologist, sports psychologist, Betsy Tuffrey. He was with us on episode 1 of series 2. So thanks, Geoff.
See you next time.
I'll see you next time, mate. Take care.